The previous video walked through the results of my first CIMT in 2022 with a company called CardioRisk that specializes in CIMTs. Some folks will even tell you they are the gold standard for CIMTs. The bottom line was, my average intermediate thickness was 0.88 millimeters, which wasn't great because a normal IMT for someone my age is around 0.8. My average peak thickness was 1.12. The diameter of a carotid artery averages around 7.5 millimeters, which is about the diameter of a pencil. So these numbers would indicate that I have about a 15% blockage in my carotid artery. And according to the CardioRisk arterial age algorithm we learned about in the previous video, my average CIMT corresponds to the arteries of someone in their mid-70s, and I was only 63 at the time. Well, that's not good news. Here's another model I found in a study from 2018 that agrees with the CardioRisk model. They did CIMTs on over 1,000 healthy people, and again, my 63-year-old IMT of 0.88 corresponds to a healthy male in his mid-70s. Exactly what the CardioRisk model says. That makes me feel pretty good about the CardioRisk model for arterial age. Okay, that was just a review of the 2022 results. There's a link to that video in the description below. And before we get started on the 2023 results, I have to remind you that I am not a medical professional and none of this should be taken as medical advice. I'm just sharing with you my experience and impressions as a way for me to learn more about this subject, because there's no better way to learn something than to try and explain it to someone else. So please help me learn by leaving a comment below with your thoughts. Hopefully, we'll all learn together. Again, that CIMT was in October of 2022 with CardioRisk. My plan was to get an update around the same date every year, but CardioRisk didn't have an event planned for October of 2024 anywhere near me here in Atlanta. So I found a local company called Atlanta Ultrasound and scheduled a CIMT with them. And I thought if nothing else, it would just be interesting to compare the two different companies' results. That 2022 CIMT with CardioRisk said my average IMT was 0.88 millimeters and my average max was 1.12. The following year, in October 2023, Atlanta Ultrasound measured my average CIMT at 0.79 millimeters and an average max of 1.09. That's a 10% decrease in plaque thickness. And while I would love to believe that's real, it's not really believable. But also not a surprise. If you watch the live demo video, you know how sensitive these measurements can be to the location of the sensor, the position of the IMT measurement box, etc. And since CardioRisk considers their measurement technique or protocol proprietary, we have no idea if we're even measuring the same thing. And there's 1 year difference between these measurements. A lot can change in 1 year, so we have too many variables to say this is an apples-to-apples comparison. But these are less than 1/10 of a millimeter apart, which is about the thickness of a sheet of paper. So I am encouraged that they're in the same ballpark. And how cool is that a CIMT has that much resolution? That's amazing. Now, after doing that October measurement, I noticed that CardioRisk had set up an event just a couple months later in my area in February of 2024. So I thought it would be interesting if I scheduled a CIMT with both CardioRisk and Atlanta Ultrasound as close together as possible to eliminate the time variable and get a better comparison. CardioRisk was set up for February 2nd, and Atlanta Ultrasound was set up for the very next day on February 3rd. Here are the CardioRisk numbers. The average IMT is only 2/100ths of a millimeter different than the previous year, and the peak is almost 1/10 of a millimeter less. Again, if you saw that live demo video, you know that simply moving the measurement box up or down or left or right, or moving the ultrasonic sensor ever so slightly can change the result. So these results are astonishingly close. And the Atlanta Ultrasound numbers from the next day aren't far off either. This is kind of hard to visualize, so let's overlay all of this on the CardioRisk arterial age graph. This is my first IMT in 2022, which says my arteries look to be a good 14 years older than they should be. That's not a good thing, but also not unexpected given my multiple visits to the ER for heart attacks and 6 stents. If we add the second year's CardioRisk results, which were actually 15 months later, we see the arterial age seems to run parallel to the curves, which means my plaque isn't getting worse. It's simply progressing at the rate we would expect it to based on this CardioRisk model of arterial age. plaque not diverging from the expected rate of growth is a good thing. Let's add the Atlanta Ultrasound IMT we got exactly 1 year after the first one. It says my arteries aren't so old after all. But if we add the Atlanta Ultrasound results from just 3 months later, which were essentially the same date as this guy, it's a little more in line. Remember, that's only 6/100ths of a millimeter different, or roughly half the thickness of a sheet of paper. The resolution of this ultrasound technology is crazy. As we saw in the live demo video, there can be a lot of variability in these measurements, and we still don't know if these two companies are using the exact same metrics, protocols, or techniques. That they got within the thickness of half a sheet of paper is pretty amazing. If we look at the Atlanta Ultrasound radiologist report for this guy, let me bring that up, and scroll down to the CIMT results, we see the right side CIMT had a high quality index, while the left side had a very low quality index. The quality index is a number the CIMT software generates telling how confident it was in the measurement. So if we assume this low quality index means the left CIMT is not especially representative, and we bias the average results more towards this guy who has a good quality index, well, now the biased average moves up and is almost perfectly in sync with the CardioRisk results. I wish CardioRisk would publish their quality indices. I don't know if their results take that into account or not when they do their averages. By the way, this is the raw data report from Atlanta Ultrasound that comes directly from the radiologist. Atlanta Ultrasound has a new patient-friendly version in the works that looks like this, with all kinds of helpful graphics and visuals to help you understand what's going on. Now, this is an early rough draft and not fully released yet. They just let me borrow it to show you what's coming. Once they do release it, I'll do a video to walk you through it. The quality index for this guy was 0 for the right side and not applicable for the left. So there's definitely something weird going on this CIMT. So much so that I'm inclined to ignore it, and really glad I got the second better quality index CIMT in February, especially after we bias it up based on the quality indexes. Now, I would love to be able to say my trajectory looks like this because it means my plaque isn't getting worse. But these CIMTs only span 1 year, which isn't nearly enough data to start speculating on a trend. The ultimate hope is over time, we see the plaque regress like this, which would mean I'm reversing my plaque. We're going to need a lot more CIMTs before we can even begin to see how this is trending, especially given how touchy the data can be. So, join me in the next video where we'll add the February 2025 CIMTs to this graph. And yes, that was plural CIMTs. I will be comparing CIMTs from both companies again. Click here to see that video.